Hello, Kaiju family, Tokusatsu fans, and Kaiju Ramen readers. My name is Michael, and I am here with my good friend and contributor to Kaiju Ramen, Mr. Elijah Thomas.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Oh, it's going, man. We're here to talk about a little something that you put together, right?
Yeah, that's what I was told we were here for.
Yeah. Well, turns out we're actually not here for that at all. We're here to, I don't know. We're here just to shoot the shit, I guess. But no, seriously, we're gonna watch a little film that you put together. We're gonna watch it together, and then we're gonna talk about it. I wanted to do this to give you a platform to talk about everything, to really just tell us the process of everything that went through this film. So I'm going to shut up for a second and I'm going to let you explain to the listener and the watcher what they will be viewing here in a second. And then we'll just get into it and then we'll talk about it. How about that?
Okay. Yeah. So to start off, if you are watching this, I'm in the big screen. If you are watching this, whether it's live or following this, or if you're gonna watch it whenever I inevitably post it, so it's not a live stream version, definitely watch it with headphones. That's the first thing I'm gonna say. Watch it with headphones. I may have went a little overboard with the amount of sound design in this. So there is a lot of sounds and a lot of small things that you can pick up best with headphones and not with speakers. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Other than that, yeah, this is a short film I made for GFEST 2023. Basically, the synopsis of this in like 2 sentences, I would say, is you follow the character of Ryan as he discovers that something is heading towards his direction. What it is, he doesn't know, but he knows he has to seek shelter. Very much inspired by natural disasters such as tornadoes and kind of the time frame and what comes with that. So yeah, that's it's only a 6-minute short film, so that's, without giving away too much, that's pretty much the brief description for this. So that's really all I got before showing it off and giving spoilers. So
Yeah. So this was first showed off at GFest this year. I don't think you mentioned that, but this was first showed off at the film festival at GFest this past July. We were all in the room with you. Me, Nathan, Adrian was there. Kim of Kaiju Kim was there. Danny was there. We were all there to support you. And it was, honestly, before we get into it, it was just really amazing to see the work you had put into this.
Well, I appreciate it. I know you had only seen, I mean, you knew what you did for it because you were an actor. You were kind enough to be an actor, and you were actually the first person I officially cast in this film. So I appreciate it. The work you did, and then you saw the edit of your scene, but the rest of it, you hadn't even heard like the sound design or
No.
the footage that was cut in. You had just seen like just your stuff.
Yep.
So,
I saw that plus a little bit of the Chiron and the script. I saw the script and that's it. So I wanted to go into it completely blind, and I did not regret that decision at all because it was really fun to see it all come together in the final product.
well, I'm happy to hear that. I'm really happy to hear that.
Well, I guess now it's now or never. We're just going to go ahead and show what we got. So if you're watching this on your phone, or you're watching this on a tablet, you're not watching this on television, I suggest, if you've got headphones handy, putting headphones in. If not, this will be posted to your YouTube channel.
Yes.
Next Tuesday, where you
Or
can
this
watch the
Tuesday?
full length thing.
This Tuesday.
This coming Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So this coming Tuesday. So if you want to rewatch it, by all means do. But yeah, so here we go.
I think it's cropped wrong.
We interrupt this broadcast to alert every citizen within a 150-mile radius of Kipling City to find a disaster shelter immediately. I repeat, find a disaster shelter immediately. Your life depends on it. Just a few moments ago, large black clouds began to
Gotta
cover the
love
streets of
technical
downtown.
difficulties.
Pedestrians there are claiming to hear sounds unlike anything they have ever heard before. Some are even comparing them to the sounds of angels. Right now, we're going to show you a clip that was just sent to us a few moments ago. These clouds somehow possess a power that has suddenly laid downtown to waste. We're getting reports that the clouds have moved opposite the wind towards the station, the west side of our once beautiful city. Gone. We're just getting word that the clouds are seconds away from the station. That was my favorite part of the transition. Allow me to reiterate. Please, find shelter. Find somewhere safe. And if you can't, tell your loved ones goodbye. And to my wife, Julie, I love you. And I'm sorry.
Oh God. Where do I go? Please, God, don't let me die. Please, God, don't let me die. What happened? Oh God. God help us all. come to you now. The general population is in authorities tell us to stay. Do not leave. It is unsafe out on the streets.
What it is, you don't know. Well
Thank you.
done, sir. Well done. Well done. So just before we get into it, just want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Oscar, it's good to see you, man. Thank you for stopping by. Adrian, get back to your date. We'll talk soon. Eric says future Steven Spielberg in the making. That is high praise.
I don't know about that. I mean, if that happened, I wouldn't complain. But
Right, exactly. Facebook user, tell us who you are. But hi, good to see you. Joe, our friend Joe at Monsters with Attitude. I saw your movie before, Elijah. It was fantastic. You should be proud of yourself. Also, hello, boys. Hello, Joe.
hey, Joe.
So just some more praise coming in from the crowd. Well done, sir. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm just gonna start off by asking, what was the inspiration for this film?
Okay, so to answer that, I kind of have to explain my history with the amateur video contest in GFEST.
Sure.
So back in 2018, I was in school still, and I was given a project to create a short film inspired by like dystopians and create something from there. And I was put as project lead from I was put as the project lead and director for the short film. And I said, let's do a Godzilla fan film. And that's what we did. And it was awful. It was pretty bad. I had a week to do it, and it was my first time ever using video software. It was all done on my phone. It was not very good. But I took all the files and whatnot, and I redid the footage. I basically George Lucased it, which is funny because I took some influence from Star Wars in the original plan. So what it was basically a computer controlled the human race, and Godzilla was awoken, and Godzilla destroyed the city, and the computer and the human race was released, and they were free, and they could do whatever they needed to do. And I set it up to do a sequel that Godzilla wasn't actually dead, because in the film it's thought Godzilla dies, but he's really not dead. And then I put in the GFEST contest. It did not win, and it hurt because I was like, I wanted to make a story, and I felt like I had done a story, but it wasn't good enough for what they wanted, which kind of hurt. But looking back at it now, I'm really happy that didn't win. I think because the sequel, I wanted to do real life actors. The one prior was toys. So for the sequel, I had people act in air quotes for it, and I wanted to do some world building, and I only had 6 minutes, but I wanted to do something that was creating a world for people to maybe be interested in. So that was kind of like my, okay, let's create something new. Let's create this universe, this world that just so happens to be a Godzilla story. I always wanted that universe to not necessarily be a Godzilla universe, but more of a universe with Godzilla.
Sure.
Which I think, looking back, that's kind of the roots of where this story started. I wanted to create something, and the only way I knew how to do it was with Godzilla, because that Godzilla is what made me want to do filmmaking. Specifically, I remember in the David Callett commentary for Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, when he's introducing Ishiro Honda, he brings
Very
up,
good commentary.
or actually it was the 54 commentary on the Criterion Blu-ray. It was the
Okay.
Honda, it was the David Callett commentary for Criterion's 54. And when he
Mhm.
introduced Honda, he said that Honda at a young age saw a film being made, and he was specifically drawn by one specific person, and he was curious because this person was calling everything. He was controlling all of these people and all this stuff, and he found out that that was the director, and that's how he learned that he wanted to become a director.
Mhm.
And hearing that story really inspired me to become a director. That is my hope in life. There is so much you can do. I mean, just before the stream, we were talking about color theory and typography. Like
Right.
that thought process goes into filmmaking as well. Lighting and angles and how much is
Motion.
filling in the shots and whatnot. There is so much. The music, the writing, like the acting, everything is just there. And so I wanted to do a bigger and better project. So I did the sequel to that first fan film, and I submitted it to GFEST. It was made for GFEST. I was really proud of it, and it didn't win. It didn't win, and I was like, what can I do? Like, I'm done. And at that point, I was like, maybe it's the fact that I'm limiting myself to 6 minutes to tell a story. I want to tell a story. So then I started development on a third one. It was planned to be a trilogy of films, and then I would go from there. But the third one, I was like, screw the whole GFest amateur video contest thing. I want to do a 30-minute short film with real actors and a story, and I want to make something that people are going to like.
Sure.
And that's when I started the development of the third film. I had a script completed, I had my actors set, and then COVID hit. And the actors, so much happened in during COVID that some of my actors moved away and people stopped talking to each other and a lot of stuff. And the project just kind of fell into this limbo. And at that point, I wasn't producing any films, any stories. And then, after that, when I got back in school, I ended up working on a theatrical play. I ended up working as the assistant director and stage manager and voice actor for a production of Little Shop of Horrors, which that really taught me a lot. I actually originally was not supposed to be the assistant director, but what had happened is I want to be a director. I have listened to commentaries, I've read books, I've watched films, I've watched behind the scenes footage. And as I, as I know it, and Michael, you've seen me go into this, I just kind of fall into that. Let me tell you what I want. Let me direct you into creating something that I think is going to look great.
Right.
And that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It depends on the situation. I've definitely gotten to arguments with people at work on how stuff is designed and family members on how things look and
It
and when
comes
I
down to trusting your own vision, right?
right and when I was I went to school for multimedia as well during this time. And I kind of one of the running gags in the class was you don't want to take a photo like your grandmother would with her phone camera, which is like this really like just like let's snap a photo real quick and boom, it's done. We have everything in it. It's good.
Right.
She's got the flash on, there's red eyes, like it looks awful.
Sure.
So between being in that class, wanting to be a director, and having the opportunity to essentially direct this play, I kind of started developing my direction, my thought process, my creative brain. And then I went to GFEST again in 2022 whenever it came back. I didn't enter into the contest. I was like, I'm not interested in doing this again. I think I still had the hopes of doing my third film in that trilogy. So I was like, I'm not doing this. And then enter like December of last year. And I was talking to a friend, and he said, "Yeah, if I go to GFest next year, I want to go and enter into the video contest. I want to put an entry in." And my brain said, "Why aren't you doing that? Like, why aren't you creating something to put in the contest? You know, third time's charm.
Right.
Kind of go from there." So I was like, you know what? That's actually a great idea. I haven't done that. I haven't made a short film in at that point 3 years. So I was like, I need to do that. And he was like, oh no. Now he's gonna if I enter in the contest, I'm gonna lose because he's gonna put something in. And I was like, you never know. I had only produced like 2 actual short films and a handful of just shorts. I didn't think that I would like produce anything. But of course, like since that time, I had finished assistant directing and managing a play. I ended up doing production manager and ghost directing on another play that the director didn't even know I was ghost directing. But I had all the actors. After we would rehearse, we would go and I would teach them script analysis, and we would go over the entire script and like I would direct them. And then from there, I would, I just kind of kept working and working, and I was creating. What I didn't realize was my creative brain. It was cooking all through last year between the plays and the podcast, and Kaiju Ramen. I was writing for Kaiju Ramen and all that. And I was doing some acting on the side. Like I was developing what we see now today, which, could be a mess. It could be a disaster. I don't know. We'll see. But I wanted to do something this year for the contest. So from there, it kind of spiraled into, okay, I want to do a short film. It has to be kaiju related. How can I do an original kaiju film without including Godzilla, but also having the money to do it? So from there, I kind of created an idea. I had this like draft, and then I called Nathan, our mutual Nathan Marchand, and I was like, Nathan, I need to just throw some ideas off of you. I have this in my head, and I need somebody to help me like figure out what I'm wanting here. So I told him the whole story, and he threw some thoughts back, and from there we had created the final story that you see in the short film. And then from there it was create the scripts. I had him like proofread it, make sure it looked good. He gave some criticisms, and I revised it. And then I was like, okay, time to start filming. And then we shot it over a weekend, and then it was edit for about a month and a half, and then get down to crunch time. And eventually I finished it and sent it off. And then we got to see the final product at GFEST, which, looking at it now, that was actually pretty big, considering that I would consider this my first official short film. So that's the long-winded answer to what inspired me to kind of do this project.
That was the kind of the journey right there. It was the journey. So before we move on really quickly, I want to say hi to Robert Kennedy. Robert, thank you for popping in. Jonathan Portman of Collect All Monsters. Good to see you, buddy. And we're gonna get to Grattan here in just a second, because Grattan did help out with this as well. Good to see you, Grattan. I don't know. Why would you? That's a fair question. Why would you listen to Nathan?
So Nathan does have, I believe he has a degree in creative writing.
He does, yes.
And
he
Nathan,
he is a professional.
Nathan and I mean, we're good friends, and
Mhm.
you know, when I need some thoughts on some like, you know, some creative thoughts, I usually call him out of the blue. I'm like, Nathan, I need your opinion on this, and then we'll end
Mhm.
up talking for like an hour and a half, and by the end of it, I know what I want out of my thoughts. Um, and maybe one day I won't have to call Nathan, but until then, I will continue to call him and ask for his creative mind to help my creative mind figure out what it's saying.
Yeah. Hello, Helmy. It's good to see you too. I saw you just now pop in. Um, but I want to go back to let me find it here. Where you at? I want to go back to another aspect of this short film that's really, really good and really well done. Is that's the sound design. Like you can influence a lot of emotion and a lot of those feelings of dread, and I would say a lot of the emotion that we feel in this film is anxiety. Like the whole film is very like there's a lot of tension in this film. And it's very and so the film is successful in that regard is the tension just keeps ramping up from the opening sequence and the new with the newscaster to God Save Our Souls, which is the if anyone doesn't know that, it's like that is the very meaning of SOS, Save Our Souls. Um, but you kind of you twisted that a little bit. So um, there's a lot of good tension throughout this entire short film, and a lot of that tension comes from the sound design. So walk us through the concept of how you wanted this film to sound.
Okay, so this goes back to the initial thought of the short film. So while I was
Mhm,
on that phone call with Nathan, I
mhm,
said I want there to be little to no dialogue. I want there to be
okay.
little dialogue, and I want it all to be sound. Because sound and silence are sometimes what leads people to have thoughts and have emotions. I'm not gonna lie, editing this, like hearing the sound effects, there's a sequence in this film that I actually like I start to clench up because it stresses me out to hear that, because in my
What
mind,
what sequence is that? Out of
so
curiosity.
it's in the second half of the short, which is following the thing's arrival.
Mhm,
When the screen cuts to black and then fades back in, you can hear a faint thud,
mhm,
thud, thud. And to me, that's a heartbeat.
mhm.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
And it does speed up as he gets closer to the door. And
Mhm,
it's very, very subtle. Like it's silence, but that's really the only thing you hear for the first few
sure.
seconds until
Sure.
the other sounds come up. But this is the interesting thing. So I hear a heartbeat, but those are footsteps. The actual sound was I had my actor on that floor walk on his heels, and I had my phone on the floor recording.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
that's the sound of the sound waves going through the concrete on that floor,
mhm,
which then I think about, is that his footsteps? But it's not, because it's not matched up to him. So those footsteps have to be something else. So is there something walking? Like, can he hear that, or is that his heartbeat? Like,
mhm,
and either of those, like the fact that his heartbeat is kind of slow and then it gets faster as he gets closer to that door, like what's behind that door? So
mhm,
for me, like it just stresses me out to hear that, because when I think of a strong heartbeat, like I get that when I get anxious. So that to me just it really surprised me how that made me, the guy who like recorded the audio, put the
mhm,
audio in, edited it, and
mhm,
spliced it in those sequences. The fact that I got anxious kind of scared me. The fact that like
mhm,
it was either I was so like into this project that like I felt everything, or it's just the fact that to me, that was kind of scary to have that sound effect. So for me, like that's one of the 2 sound effects in the film that I really like. And it's just like the subtle nature of it.
I think that it can work on 2 levels. It can be the heartbeat of your actor, of Ryan, or it can be the heartbeat of the audience. Because I know when I was watching it, it didn't really communicate that. It didn't communicate it very well when we were all in the room together at GFEST. It definitely didn't communicate it well there, and it doesn't communicate it very well when you're just watching it and listening to it through speakers. You have to really understand and really like feel that. You have to have headphones in. Like
Right.
when we were watching it together just now, I have an earpiece in, so I can feel that heartbeat, that bum, 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 in my chest, and I thought that was really good. And so it's interesting that you could read that as either Ryan's heartbeat, your actor, or it can be sort of the anxiety of the audience walking through this journey or this situation, we'll say, with Ryan.
Yeah, and going back to really all of it. So I knew from the get-go that I wanted this to be a very sound effect driven film with little to no music. And I wanted there to be little to no like dialogue minus the initial sequence that's basically your exposition. So I wanted the sirens to be kind of the looming threat. I wanted the roar to be like the, oh crap, it's here. And then I wanted all the other sound effects to complement those 2, specifically the roars and the sirens. Those were the 2 things I knew were going to be like what would either lead to the anxiety or create the anxiety. And like what's interesting is rewatching it now, I almost forget the sirens are there because they're there for most of the they're there for most of the short film, but they don't, like, for me, I kind of forget that they're there because of all the other sound effects and trying to like figure out everything. But so I knew from the get-go that this had to be a sound effects driven short film. I knew it would have to be. Mainly because I also couldn't show the kaiju. I had no money. I couldn't do that. So for me, it was I have to find a way to create anxiety for the kaiju without showing the kaiju, because I can't show the kaiju because I'm not an animator. I can't create a suit and have somebody be like this I can't create a suit. I can't create a hand puppet. Like, that wouldn't work. That just doesn't, like, the thought that this could be, is it a tornado? Is it a hurricane? Like, what is it? You don't know. So I had to communicate that through sound. And I mean, look at Oppenheimer. That's a great example of the bomb. The bomb in that movie, the sound effect for the actual explosion is about 2 minutes after the actual explosion occurs in the film. Which added a sense of dread. Like, where's the sound? It's dead silent. So that's like a great example of sound effects done right. And for this film, I knew that I would have to do that. So I ended up filming this like an Italian movie. None of the audio you hear besides about 3 sequences is actually on camera. The only scenes that have actual audio that were picked up by the camera was your audio in the room, the sound effects of the bed getting off of it, and then the clanging of the actor hitting something while trying to look around in the windows. Those are the only 3 moments where there was actual audio on camera picked up and used in the final film. Everything after that was overlaid and dubbed and edited to line up with where he was walking and when his footsteps hit the ground, or just like, you know, everything else. So it was I knew from the get-go that this was going to be a heavy post sound design film. I knew that I would have to create the sounds because I wanted this to be original. So I had to go and record all of these sounds. I went and I had somebody like shake leaves to get the sound of, you know, trees rustling. I sat my phone in a field of grass as wind blew by. I had my actor, you know, walk on his heels. I had, oh boy, what else? I walked around on wooden steps to get the creaking wood effect. I had, there's a sound of a rumble right before the lights go out, and that's the sound of a V8 engine sitting idle. I went and I tried to be crafty. The roar has a bass guitar that strings are loose, just like the original Godzilla, except there's a machete that's strung across it instead of like.
Oh, interesting. Because you and I had not talked about. I don't know why, but either probably just because we were just too busy, or we had just had a lot going on. I remember you told me you were very, very proud of how the roar for the creature turned out.
Yes. Thanks to Nathan, he suggested JP Gant. He's a sound engineer. He's worked with Nathan, and so I reached out to him and we worked together. There's a few drafts of the roar that he created that were a little more animalistic, and I wanted to be a little otherworldly because I'd like to think maybe this creature's not from Earth, whatever it is. So I wanted it to be a little otherworldly, a little like scary. So like there is a slight lion roar. But there's also like the sound of the machete going across the strings. And I don't know what else, but he included a lot of animal and a lot of natural roars. But one thing I required, and I said, I need you to include this, was that bass getting the machete across it, because I knew that sound would add the otherworldly like nature to it.
Right.
And one thing I was really disappointed about at the GFEST panel or showing was, so this is in surround. It's not mono. I never even thought about doing mono. I was like, it's gonna, you know, there'll be left and right. It's a dynamic sound. There is so much editing in here that it has to be dynamic. And what had happened was one of their speakers went out. And I feel like I should be proud of this. So when they showed my film, they had like older Bose speakers hooked up.
Sure.
But the bass in those speakers was not good enough. So like the roar, you could only hear half of the roar in the speakers, because the bass, which is a huge part of that, just it couldn't, the speakers could not do it.
Yeah, because you turned to me, I think you and I were sitting close by each other, and I heard you say, you can't hear the bass, you can't hear the bass. And you were flipping out a little bit.
Yeah, I was disappointed because there's a lot of audio Easter eggs. There's a lot of audio detail. Like the roar can be heard during your news broadcast, specifically when the glitching starts happening, because it's there. But you can't hear that unless you have your headphones on. And then it gets closer, like thunder does when the storm gets closer. So the roar keeps getting closer, and like the time is shorter between each roar until the final roar during the oh God on the floor scene. And then at the end of that, you know, there's one final roar that's like the loudest and longest of all of them. And I was, on one hand, I was upset because it's like, this isn't doing the roar justice. Because the
Right.
roar, I knew the roar would have to, because that's what the kaiju is a roar.
Yeah.
If the roar
Yeah, there's no
doesn't sell it,
the only visual we get is the cloud circles during the
correct.
news broadcast. Yeah.
So I
And through the
knew that,
window.
and through the window, right? So I knew the kaiju would have to like shine through the sound.
Mhm.
And like watching it, and the speakers not being able to like do that, um it's it's disappointing that that happened. But on the other hand, it's also like, well, I had a better sound design than the speakers could handle.
Mhm. Yeah, Grattan mentioned that it's always good to mix with professional headphones and speakers and switch to a crappy pair of speakers every now and then, so you know it will sound intentional on most setups, because not
Right,
everyone's going to be an audiophile. Not everyone's going to have, $1,000+ setup,
right.
uh, or
And
thousands of dollars of equipment to watch or listen to media.
I was using like I have the newest version of the Bose headphones, and that's what I
Mhm.
was using. And like even these, like these are one of the newest JBLs, so like I
Mhm.
can still hear it fine. But like if I were to play it out loud from my laptop speaker,
Sure.
it wouldn't sound right.
Mhm.
So I mean, I guess that's one thing I've learned is I can't expect the best of quality sound, that I
Right.
have to work with some lesser of quality. It's kind of like, in theaters, and this is, I would say this kind of was the influence for the roar. I wanted it to be kind of like that first 2014 roar. When
Mhm.
you were in theaters and you saw Godzilla 2014 and that first roar happened, the bass in 2014 for that roar is huge. Like they went
Mhm.
all out to create that roar and make it the biggest, most bassiest like roar ever. But
Mhm.
since 2014, they've removed the bass more and more as the roar continues to show up,
Mhm.
to the point now where it doesn't have that effect, that size, that monstrous tone that it once did, which I find a little disappointing because the 2014 roar is horrifying. Like
Mhm.
hearing that for the, I mean, in the trailer, like the way they use that roar in the trailer just like sends shivers down my spine.
Mhm.
So I wanted to do something similar to that.
Okay.
I feel like I've
It's
rambled a little too much on the
No,
sound
you
here.
no, it's all no, it's like, you're right, because this short film lives and dies by its sound design, and I think that's what a lot of us in the crowd were the kind of most that were there to watch it at GFest were the most disappointed by, because we knew that, because leading up to this moment, leading up to that, you talked about how impressed and how proud you were of the sound design, of how much Grattan and some others had helped you with the sound design, that it was a
Right.
little bit disappointing. But you can't
Right.
always anticipate certain issues.
And I think it ended up, I had 17 layers at one point during the short film of audio
Mhm.
layers. Like at one point there were
Mhm.
17 sounds going all at once.
Mhm.
Um and I doing that, like this was my first time really focusing on, when I make this stuff, I always like to think, okay, what's the one thing I'm going to learn here? So for
Mhm.
this short film, it was, I want to learn how to properly
Mhm.
sound mix.
Right.
And so, I was seeing, okay, can I add a little reverb to make it sound like it's farther away from the speaker? Can
Sure.
I add some bass here? Can I, you know, alter it a bit? And I'm sure if a professional touched it, they could make it even better. But I
Mhm.
was pretty happy with what I ended up doing here. I was
Mhm.
expecting something of lesser quality than I actually got.
Mhm.
So I'm very happy for what I had. Um, and that ended up taking a huge portion of the post production because I had to, go do some ADR for the actor. I had to do my Foley. I had to do, the monster stuff and all of that.
Sure. So we've covered your inspiration for the film. We've covered sound design, which is a huge part of this film. Now I want to talk about some of your directing skills for this film, right? So I want to talk about like when you're communicating with your actors, because there are only two actors in this film, me and Ryan. So starting with Ryan, because he is technically the lead role in this short film. What direction did you give Ryan to put him in the space that he needed to be for this short film?
So there's only two cuts in this film, right? You have the opening up until you get into the basement, and then you have the following events, right? So for the opening, the way I went about it was I was like, look, so in the original script, I had the idea of actually bringing back one of my old short films as if he was watching it on television, only for it to switch to the broadcast, like it's breaking news. That ended up getting cut just to kind of shorten and kind of streamline it, just to get to the point. And I thought opening up with that would bring enough context that you wouldn't have to be like, so what was with the footage at the beginning? And
it would simply just be there for an Easter egg, and that's it.
Right. And I already had done a little Easter egg, which I'll talk about here in a second, for one of my projects in it. But that's not the point I'm getting at here. So I was like, look, what we're doing here is you were just watching television, right? Like you're at home, you're watching television, and all of a sudden, your broadcast changes to this broadcast, and you watch this newscaster basically break down, and you see his final moments, because in the shot, the camera pans away to see Ryan's reaction as the footage cuts to static.
Sure.
And so I was like, look, you have to be so in that, I always try to explain how I would feel. So in that, I would feel confused, conflicted, scared, and nervous. And then as that shot continues, the sirens come out. And when the sirens come on is when you see Ryan start to really freak out.
Sure.
So he's kind of sitting there, and I'm like, you're shocked. Like you're trying to process everything. And then it comes to you, look, it's heading your direction. What do you do? Like, if I was in a situation, like, what would I grab? Would I grab anything? Is there for me, it's like, okay, if the house is on fire, what from my collection am I grabbing? Or am I just running? Am I saying, I don't need that stuff, I just need to get out of here?
Right.
So it's that fear, it's that panic of what do you do? What do you do? Like, your brain's going a million miles an hour. You're stressed out, you're anxious. And I told him, I need you to look around. So what my direction is, we walk through it. And we walk through it, and then we do a run. And if I like how he's doing it, I say, that's good. Let's keep that going. If it's different, so the way he looks, I was like, okay, look, you need to look at everything in the room to figure out if you need to grab anything. Do you need to grab a bottle of water? Do you need to grab a knife? What are you grabbing? And then I told him, but you don't grab anything because you're I gotta go. I have to leave. He doesn't even put shoes on. It's very much okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I need to go. I don't need to do anything. I just have to go. Seek shelter. The idea of the film is the title, Seek Shelter. So as he's trying to figure out what he's doing, he realizes he just needs to get out of there. And that's what the newscaster says. Find shelter. Tell your loved ones you love them. Find shelter. Get out.
Right.
So as that finally clicks, that's when he gets up and gets out of the room. But he's moving so fast that he does stop himself, and he realizes what he's in. Growing up, my grandparents always told me a story about how a tornado hit their house and how my grandfather sat out on the porch and watched the tornado come down the hill to their house. And he watched it until he realized he had to get to the basement. So he came running in. And by the time he came in, it was too late. The tornado had hit the house, so they had to take shelter in their kitchen, which ended up being a good thing because the whole basement fell in. But they didn't have time because they didn't think about what they were doing. So, like, my grandfather, I think the story goes, he just went under the kitchen table and was holding the legs down, and that was his shelter. That was like, that's what he could do. That was at the shortest amount of time. But he had to see it for himself. It was that human curiosity of, okay,
Yeah.
What's this look like? What am I looking at? So once Ryan stops at the doorway and realizes what he's doing, then his curiosity kicks in, right? So then he goes, he's looking at all the windows. And I'd like this, and I told him, when you're looking out the windows, you're also debating, can I just leave? Can I just go get in my car and leave? But you forgot your keys. You didn't grab anything. So going out there would end up being a mistake. But that thought process, you're just going a million miles an hour. You don't know what you're going to do. So it's very chaotic. I told him, I want your moves to be frantic. I want them to be like, what am I going to do? Where am I going? Like, this is your house, but you don't know where you're going. You're going back and forth between windows until you finally look out the main window and you realize you have to find shelter. It's too late.
Yeah.
I believe, if I remember correctly, you have 3 minutes once the sirens go off to find shelter for a tornado. The sirens went off like a minute before he ever went to the basement. So he doesn't have time. So he goes in the basement, and as he's moving, there is a roar that you can hear that happens as the camera pans back up and you see what he was looking at. And then you go back down, and what had happened is he fell because he looked out the window. Once you realize, oh crap, I don't have time. You're moving so fast, you might stumble, you might fall. So he fell. We see what he looked at, and by the time we go back, the roar's happening, and we're just following him down there as the echoing of the roar occurs. And at that point, like, he's looking at a window because, I mean, once you're down there, like, there's nothing, there's obviously nothing in there that he can hide under, really. So he's just in the middle. He's curled up in a ball. He's like, please, like, help me. And then the first footstep or bam happens. And that was a happy accident. What had happened was the gimbal I was using lost its tracking. So the camera messed up. And I was like, what am I going to do with this shot? Like, it's now messed up. And then I came to the realization, what if the house gets hit? Because after that, the lights start flickering, the creaking of the wood occurs, dust starts flying. What if I just add in a few more things? And that's when he ends up getting in the fetal position on the floor. And at that point, and this was where Nathan came in, he said that a lot of people, and I actually just watched a video recently where a military guy said that for a lot of people who aren't believers, when death is at their door, they suddenly believe.
Right.
So I'd like to think that even if he didn't believe at that moment, he thought he was going to die. So he was begging, please, God, please. But he's also so stressed and anxious. When I get stressed and anxious, I don't speak. Like, it hurts. Like, I have to push it out. So, like, I didn't want there to be a lot of audio because, when you're stressed and anxious and scared, you almost forget to speak. And so I told him, like, this is your panic mode. You are, like, as, like, curled up in a ball as you possibly can because you could die.
Sure.
The basement could fall in on. You don't know. You don't know. And the fact the wood's creaking and there's dust flying and lights turning on and off, they're like, this could be the end.
Sure.
So that's how we ended the shots. I was like, I want you, like, this is where your brain is just filled with fear. So following that, I said, okay, X amount of time has passed. We don't know how much time has passed. I never say that because I don't want to tell people how long it took him to finally come to. Like, did he pass out? Is this right after? Like, what is this? We don't know. To add to the mystery of what's going on. So for this, the lights we used that I ended up, they're like, I went and bought a huge lighting setup for this. We called them the heaven lights because of how bright they were.
Right.
So in my mind, I was like, okay, Ryan, look, you're looking at heaven lights. Did you die? Are you still alive? Are you in that middle area between death and life? Are you in purgatory? What is this? You don't know. And during this moment, everything goes quiet. You just hear the thud and the sound effects of the house. And I wanted it to be kind of ambiguous. So I told him, like, you don't know what's going on here.
Sure.
You basically are just coming to after having an anxiety attack to the point where you passed out. You don't know how long you've been there. And so I when he walks through the house outside, I was like, you are confused. Like, you don't know where you're at. Like, there's lights everywhere. The lighting is deliberate in the way it's moving because it's following him. As you watch it, you see the lights are moving, and that's because whatever the light is following him. As you go up the stairs, his back becomes no longer lightened.
Sure.
And that's because whatever is going on is following him. And then you have him opening the door and looking out, and then the light engulfs him. And then he says, God help us all. So I wanted him to be confused. I wanted him to question whether or not he was alive. And when we did the ADR, which is all the audio you hear, I started with, I need you to be like confused. Your mind's going a million miles an hour. Oh God, where do I go? And then I said, and I want you now to push it out. So when we did the ADR, I took him into the studio, shut off all the lights, told him, close your eyes. And then I just started talking. And I tried to get him into this mentality of he was in a box. You were in a box because this is kind of claustrophobic. So I told him, you're in a box, a black box. There's no light. You hear wind. Wind is what you're hearing. And I kept describing to him what I wanted him to see. And then he would walk up to the mic and I would have him say a line. And then I would have him walk around. I wanted him to like move so that the blood was circulating so he could really feel himself. I wanted him to kind of feel more like he was within himself screaming out. And I won't lie. And I did this deliberately. I wanted him to be a mix of emotions during this. So I deliberately poked his buttons to get him upset so that what he would say would have some anger, but also some fear and some confusion all in it.
I'm curious now what you did, what you said to him, or you don't have to share it, of course, but
so he wanted to do it a specific way. He wanted to deliver his lines, and I said, no, you're going to do it this way. And he argued with me, but the way I was responding was very, very like, not snarky, but like, you're right, I'm wrong. Even though I knew that he needed to do things to get himself into that, I wanted him to get angry. I wanted him to get frustrated. I wanted him to want to get it over with so he would put in more energy.
Mhm.
So as I kept poking these buttons, eventually he was starting to put out this way of saying the lines that I liked. And then
Mhm.
I left him. I said, now I want you to focus and I want you to start tearing up and I want you to cry if possible. And as he was delivering his lines, eventually he got to the point where tears were coming down his eyes.
Mhm.
And there were some moments where I just like, there was silence, there was nothing.
Mhm.
And I remember I ended up like afterwards I like I hit his back or something, and he was really sweaty from all of it because I didn't turn on the air conditioning. So then it was getting hot in here. So was making it muggy. So I tried to use the surroundings and what I knew to poke his buttons to get him to feel these emotions, to deliver the lines how I wanted him to.
Mhm.
Which is probably not the best, but it worked.
Well,
I
you
know
didn't have to
for
poke.
you,
You didn't have to poke my buttons. No.
no, for you, I basically said, look, you are a newscaster. This is your job. You have to keep it together until
Right.
you realize that this is over. And then you
Right.
start to, and if I remember correctly, I told you, I don't want you to say you're scared. I want you to look scared. I want you
Right.
to start having the look of, oh crap,
Mhm.
this is the end.
Right.
And then what you ended up delivering made me cry. So,
Yeah, it was interesting. Because I put myself in the mind frame of like I'm just this newscaster guy. I'm here to deliver the news. My job is to just tell people what's going on. That's it. And I put myself in this mind frame of a lot of times like newscasters are fairly removed from a situation. They're in their office, they're in their studio. They're pretty detached from like what's actually going on or what they're actually talking about. So like I put myself in the mind frame of this guy who that morning before work he got into a fight with his wife. Like busy newscaster, he got into a fight with his wife. He went out the door angry, all that's like he left angry to go to do a job that he didn't really want to do. It was Monday. He didn't really, I don't know what, if there was a day on the Chiron, but it was Monday. He didn't really want to go to work and everything just felt off to him. So he gets to the newscast, he gets to the news station, he's delivering the news. He's trying to be fairly detached from the situation. And then he realizes, oh no, like it's actually hitting a little bit closer to home as the news starts rolling in and you see me touch my ear. I had a little like you can't really see it. I thought you could see it better than that, but you see me touch my ear and there's a little black earpiece I have in my ear. You see me touch that because I needed that point of reference of something to touch. So I just wasn't putting my finger in my ear. So you see me touch my face to kind of like, and I've got producers and people talking into my ear saying, oh, like we need to shut this down. We need to leave. We need to leave. We need to leave. And I'm like, no, we need to figure out what the heck is going on. We need to tell people to seek shelter. And at the very end, I come to the realization that, oh no, this really is the end. And I'm not going to be able to hug my loved ones. And that's when you kind of hear me tell my fictitious wife at the end, I'm sorry and I love you. Because that essentially would be the only opportunity I would have to tell my loved ones goodbye because I was doing my job.
right. And when I saw that take, because you gave me about 3 takes, when I saw that one,
It was like 6, wasn't it? It was more than that.
actually, yeah, it was like 6. And in the final version, there's I don't think there's 2 takes I Frankenstein together, but the one take that we ended up using, like the opening before the tearjerker moment, I used. And then there was a small section in between that I didn't like. So I cut that and I was like, okay, how am I supposed to like transition this without it looking weird? And that's where I kind of realized, oh, I wrote in the script that there's going to be some glitches. So then I realized that I could use the glitch as a point of making the cut seamless.
Right. Right.
And then from there, I ended up getting to the point where we were able to transition onto the TV screen.
Yeah, and there's some subtleties in there too. Like I tried to work in some subtleties. Like if you notice, my tie is at the start of it, I'm very buttoned up and just ready to go. But by the end of it, like my shirt's open, my tie's undone because it's getting hotter. And like you said, it's when we get nervous or we get anxious, sometimes our body temperature rises. And so that's what I was kind of thinking is like, oh, like my body temperature is going up because I'm stressed. Like my heart is pounding right now. Why am I so hot and sweaty? And really it was actually when I filmed it in my apartment, I was like I had lights. I had not just like the lights in my apartment, but I had lights that you had sent over here for the green screen that were on me, and it was just getting
They're
very
pretty
hot. Here.
Yeah, those lights are hot.
Yeah, so I was already like I was legitimately sweating, and so I was like, I got to undo this, and I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense because I would be getting nervous and anxious as to what was going on. I wouldn't, and I'm a fidgeter anyway, so it's like it would make sense for me if I was a newscaster to start fidgeting with my tie or my shirt.
Right. Yeah.
Before we transition, just going to say hi to Kim, who is also embarking on an adventure of her own with an independent film. Erica, go support it. Kim, thanks for stopping in. Also, our friend Travis Alexander. I almost called you Alex for some reason. Sorry, Travis. But Travis Alexander, who did have some involvement in this film as well. We'll get to that in a second. And then Adrian, welcome back.
Welcome back. So yeah,
continue.
Yeah. With where do you want me to continue here?
Let's talk about I don't know. Let's talk about kind of the final product. The like how satisfied are you with the final product?
So, okay. I don't usually get emotional. Like I try to, when I'm editing videos and whatnot for like the magazine and whatnot, I'm not like, oh my God, this is so perfect. Like it's amazing. I feel like I've been emotionally moved from this. But I don't know if it was the work I put in or the work that I saw. But by the end of it, I was, like I said, during that second part, the thuds, like that gives me anxiety. The end credits gives me kind of anxiety again because I made it to be like, what's going on? Like, what are we looking at? But then there's also moments of triumph. There's two specific things which I'm happy that after the showing, you and Danny both mentioned those two things. One was the god awful transition from your scene being on the screen to on the screen. That was awful.
Why was it awful? I thought it looked
not. So the final product is amazing. But making that was a B.
A nightmare. Okay, gotcha.
So towards the end of post-production, somewhere my Adobe moved some files over by about 4 frames. So that whole transition got messed up. So what it is
and so for film noobs out there, 4 frames equates to about how much time?
Like a quarter of a second, if even that much.
Right.
It's so this film was exported at 23.993 frames per second. So there's about 24 frames in a second. I'm talking about 4. So that's a sixth of a second. All of my frames got moved. And that ruined that whole transition. So and what happened was I had audio that was 4 frames off.
Sure.
So then I had to go back and remix all 17 layers, and I had to fix the transition and the video 4 frames, which is a sixth of a second, but that ruined the whole transition because the transition is a overlay. So I had your video track on the top that I had exported as its own video. I didn't have the ticker and the green screen and you and all of that. Like that, I condensed it all into one video file so I wouldn't mess with the editing there.
Sure.
And so I had that video track, and then I had the track of the take with you being on the television. So what I had to do is I had to morph your footage to shrink and fit into the television with the black lines of the outside of the TV.
Right.
And then it had to fade out into your footage. And then what I had ended up doing is in that I actually had to zoom in. So then as it transitions into you on the television screen, I then have to zoom out to the full aspect ratio I shot in to have the full frame. Which I'm sure none of that made sense.
We're tracking, maybe.
So it was very complicated. And I also had to do a 3D layer to make it so the footage would morph properly. So it was, and 3D is kind of a mess in Adobe products. It kind of makes your computer a slug.
Sure. Oh, it does. No, it does. That's why I don't use thank God I don't have to do 3D objects all that often.
And for this transition. And so like every time I would move it like a frame, I would have to like render the whole project or else like my Premiere would become a slug. Sure. So I think I ended up spending about 16 to 18 hours just on that transition. And thankfully, Matt Burkett, God, he's such an amazing human being. I reached out to him and I said, Matt, I want to do this transition. This is what I'm wanting. I have a rough version of it somewhere it's not nearly as polished as the final one, but it was like, Matt, this is kind of what I'm doing. How do you recommend I do this? So Matt gave me some tips and he ended up getting in the special things because I appreciated his editing knowledge and helping me with that sequence. And so he gave me the tip of like zoom in on the footage you're fading out to and kind of go off that. So between that and the 3D layer and the cropping and all of that, I ended up getting the seamless transition that I liked.
Sure.
That was probably another thing I was looking to do was like, how can I make this like these transitions seamless, like they work properly? And I feel like that's one of about 5 cuts in this film. And I thought that was the best because that was the most strategic.
Would you say that is your proudest editing moment, or is there somewhere else in the film that's technically more impressive to you than that?
So if we're talking editing, which is transitions and color correction and all that, yes, that is my favorite editing moment in this film. Right. But my favorite shots actually came from the test footage that we did. So while we were doing the run through the first night, we were filming and I had bought the heaven lights, as we call them, which they were not cheap, by the way. I ended up, this is my most expensive project I've ever worked on.
Care to tell us the budget?
About $1,000 I sunk into this.
Okay.
Between all the lighting and paying the actors and the sound effects and the music, all of that.
Hang on. You paid the actors? Hang on. You paid the actors?
I did. Unlike major studios, I paid my actors.
What is this concept of paying your actors? What is this?
So I paid my actor and I paid my stage crew, my crew that I had.
Right.
So yeah, I did something that major studios can't do apparently. So yeah, I sunk in about $1,000 on this, and the most I had probably ever done before was maybe 150. So like this was pretty big for me.
Right.
I mean, 400 of that went to the green screen setup that you ended up getting.
Sure did.
Because I to me it was like no expense. Like I was John Hammond, no expenses spared. Like
Spared no expense.
if I'm going to do this and I want to make this the best thing possible, I'm going to drop as much money as I have to.
Okay.
So while we were doing the test footage, we did the shot of him getting up, and there was no fog. We hadn't put the fog in yet. That was something that I was holding off till we actually do. And I spent $100 on getting fog juice. That's a funny story. I'll tell you in here in a bit.
Fog juice. Okay.
Fog juice. Yeah.
Fog juice. Okay.
When we were doing the test shot of him getting up, there's no fog, so it wasn't moody and atmospheric, but the light was there. And I can see clear as day. I was on the floor. I had the camera, the gimbal, and I was giving him direction. And as he got up, I was getting up, and like I was following him. And as we got up, like up all the way, I did an over the shoulder shot that was a tracking. So what that is the camera is probably right. Like if we're, let's see, I'm probably about right here where my hand is. And I'm just following. I'm following him. And between the gimbal's stability, the heaven lights hitting the camera lens to create a lens flare, and the motion, I actually started crying because of that shot. Because for the first time, I had felt like I had produced something that looked cinematic, that was not shot on your Android phone that has like 720 pixels.
Right.
Like it looked authentic. And my crew hands, my stage crew, they were down there watching me. They were kind of following from behind. And one of them was in front as we were doing this. And after the shot, he said, "Why are you crying?"
Right.
And he said, like, while you were filming him here, you were crying. Like your face just, like, what happened? And I said, I just saw what was in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw what my brain had. For the first time ever, I got to see my mind, which has never happened before.
Mm-hmm.
So when we went to actually film, I knew that that shot had to be what my brain saw because I had already done that. So then it was from there, let's see the brain of Elijah Thomas. Let's see what his brain has from this script.
Uh-huh.
So we fogged up the whole basement, and we had done the shot. I think we ended up doing the shot actually about 10 times because I was like, we're going to do it again. We're going to fog this up. We're going to keep going until I see the shot I want. We ended up going till about 11 o'clock at night for this sequence.
I think you called me. You called me one night to check on my footage, and you said it was going to be a late night. So that I'm wondering if that might not be, if that wasn't maybe the night that you called me.
It might have been. It might have been.
Because it was getting late. It was around 10:30-ish when you called me.
Yeah. And like everybody was getting a little like hungry, and we were tired, and we had been filming. Because believe it or not, filming's actually exhausting. Like speaking at least as a director, like doing anything like that, I sleep like a baby afterwards. I put in so much and I'm just done after. I'm like, bedtime. I can't do this. I have to go to bed and then I'll get up and work on it again.
Sure.
So we fogged it up, and we finally shot it. And
Mm.
I saw what I wanted. I wanted something atmospheric. I wanted something that, like, the lighting looked heavenly. And I remembered, I want to say, you asked me about the transition. And then Danny turned around and said, "How did you do that lighting?" Um, and Kim just said that one short film I did knocked me out. Yeah, it's exhausting. Being the director and cameraman on anything really is exhausting. Um, but when Danny turned and said, "How did you do the lighting in the basement?" I realized that what my brain had said was right.
Yeah.
Because the fact that in the transition, the two hardest things that were in that film that took me the longest time to get on the camera or to get in the editing room, that I wanted to make sure was done right, was done right. And those two sequences, and I think it's funny because they're both the beginning of their respective scenes. Because for the transition, it's the wrap up of your scene introing our actual dilemma. And then for the Heaven Light scene, it's the conclusion of the dilemma. And I just, it was everything that I wanted from that.
Right.
So those were probably my two favorite moments from, and getting to see like that shot with color correction and whatnot made it even better. I wanted it to be kind of a dark film. I wanted it to not be like bright, like I'm like this shirt I'm wearing is bright. I wanted it to be kind of dark and muted and not entirely like cheerful, because this dude's probably dead. Like that's not a bright, colorful
That's the
moment.
reality of the situation. He's probably, as soon as he walked out that door, he's probably dead. Honestly, I thought, I honestly thought that when it cuts to him waking up on the floor, I thought he was already dead, and so we are seeing him, you know, because there's the at the beginning of the film, it's there, talks of angels and very high ethereal things. I thought maybe, to use a little bit of Christian terminology, he'd been raptured and that was it,
And it could be like that's, I from this I want to make sure that I don't establish an actual conclusion. Like I don't want to say there's an, like, I think it's up for interpretation. Maybe he survived. Maybe he's seeing what happened to the world that he once knew. Maybe he's in purgatory. Maybe he's dead. Maybe he's in that middle ground between heaven and hell. Like I don't want there to be a definitive answer. I want there to be, to leave it up to the audience. Do you, like, if you want him to survive, he survives. If you don't want him to survive, he's dead. Like, I want the audience to be able to be like, I feel like this happened. And while I do wish, like, the one real big complaint I have is I wish I could do more, but I was limited to 6 minutes. But on the other hand, it's also like, if I had more time, I would have to explain what happened. If I were to
consider it, you consider, I was gonna say, are you considering doing a sequel? Not necessarily for competition, but just for because
I don't
because
know
you
if I want to. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of the ending is up to interpretation. And at the end, I do have the stinger in the end. So what it is I messaged a lot of people. Initially, I had the thought process of like the Godzilla versus Hedorah sequence where you see all the news broadcasts and it's crazy. I didn't have time to do that. That was like a last minute thing I did. That's not in the script. Like that was like, oh, let's do an end credit scene and let's do this.
Right.
So what it was we have my friend Travis, my friend Nathan, and my friend Connor all doing voice work for this. They're playing a newscaster like you were, Michael, like the beginning. I like stories that go back to the beginning. So at the end here, we have static, which is how your scene ended. And we go back And we have news broadcasters talking about breaking news, just like how it started. But what's different is they're all talking like this is happening everywhere. Connor's Scottish, so you can hear a little bit of a Scottish accent in there.
Mhm.
So this is not just America. It's at least happening in Europe.
Right.
So, like, what's going on? And I edited it so you hear Travis say, "Do not go on the streets. It is not safe." And then you hear Nathan say, "What it is, we don't know." Kind of to complete, like, it's a jumbled up mess. Like, you don't know what you're hearing, but at the end you can hear that.
Right.
Don't go on the streets. It's not safe. But what it is, we don't know. The fear of the
Mhm.
unknown. What is this?
Right.
And then it says the end. There's no question mark. I thought about doing a question mark, but I was like, no. I want this to be a definitive, like, this is the end. Whatever this is, it's the end.
Is it
It's happening.
metaphorical? Is it a metaphorical the end, or is it
It
a?
could be.
Well, it's both.
It
It's
could be.
both. It's both. It's a metaphorical and literal. It's the end of the short film, but it's also could be the end of civilization as we know it.
Right. Because it's not safe to go out, but what we don't know what it is. And I would say that a part of that, and this was one of the influences, was Cloverfield. But I didn't want to do a found footage film. I've already done one. I did a horror found footage film. I didn't want to do that again, but I also wanted it to be very personal. So Cloverfield's a good example of personal, and Cloverfield only has one moment of music, which is during the end credits. So when I reached out to Grattan to commission him for his beautiful music, I love that. I said, I want you to think about the Cloverfield Overture. Like, that's what I'm thinking of. I want something that's beautiful but haunting and slow.
Mhm.
And that's what he did. And then you do have, like, at the end of Cloverfield, there's the little audio bit of "it's alive, it's moving," kind of saying that it's not over. Now, unlike Cloverfield, I don't have kind of the conclusion that's, like, pretty adamant, and I don't have, like, the conspiracy and whatnot. But I wanted there to be this, like, wait a minute, is this over? Like, is it? So it's the end of the short film, but does this mean that civilization's over as well? In the film, the static means the end of you, right? When it cuts to static, the broadcast is over. So the fact the static comes back and it shuts off like an old TV. In the short film, the static that's pre-established means it is the end of it.
Mhm.
So again, I try to wrap it up, go full circle.
Bookends. Yeah, bookends. Yeah. So I do have one more question, and then we're going to wrap up. It's not necessarily about the film; it's about you personally.
Oh boy.
So you're an aspiring filmmaker. You're interested. You're incredibly talented. What advice would you give to someone younger than you that wants to make their first short film but does not know where to start?
I'm going to repeat something that I was told. So I feel like this part of my journey where I'm starting to feel like I'm starting to walk on the ground that I want to walk on.
Mhm.
I've been given a ton of opportunities, and I feel like in the last year,
Mhm.
my content has upped its quality. And I feel like now I'm more creatively active in my brain. That all came following the viewing of a certain movie. And this movie, I will say, saved me from forgetting what I love.
Oh, you're definitely talking about Reptilian, aren't you?
Totally. When Steven Spielberg released The Fabelmans, I had to go see it. Spielberg is everything to me. He's the definition of why I love cinema.
Right.
And what Spielberg does is he shows his life, and he shows his love of cinema. And the look of the young Sammy watching The Greatest Show on Earth during the train sequence is how I was through that entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing Spielberg once said, because he was asked, what would you tell somebody who wants to be a filmmaker? He said, there's a camera on them. It's easier now more than ever to film because you have this. It doesn't matter that this might not be 64 megapixel. It doesn't matter if you can shoot 4K or night vision or change the contrast or the exposure or the field. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you can or can't do that. And in The Fabelmans, you see Sammy film his sisters with toilet paper wrapped around, and they're walking around like mummies. It doesn't, and they're in the closet. Like, it's not obvious that it's obvious it's not like an actual like tomb. It's their closet. But Spielberg said, record, film everything, just record. And that's probably one of the best things that I was ever told. Because after The Fabelmans, I went home and I said, I'm filming a movie tonight. I ended up staying up all night and I shot a 12-minute film that I never actually released. I'm pretty sure I have a cut of it somewhere. And that's where I learned I used lights and I used fog and I tried to figure out how to do that. And that was kind of how I figured out how to do the perfect shot in S.O.S. Seek Shelter. So film. Don't stop filming. Don't stop creating content. If your heart desires it, do it. Because for the last year, that's what I've done. I've produced more podcast episodes in the last year than I have over 3 years. I have edited more videos in the last 6 to 8 months than I have in over 2 years. But now it's not the amount I'm doing, but it's the quality I'm doing. I'm very proud of what I've done for Kaiju Ramen and what I did for S.O.S. Seek Shelter and whatnot. Now, I'm not making a short film and a video every week, but I am working on stuff and I'm learning to master my craft. And that's what even the Toho crew members of all the Godzilla movies, they never were able to perfect their craft, but they were mastering their craft. All of those movies have imperfections, but those imperfections help define a creative mind that help create this world, this fiction, because that's what film is. Film is fiction. Film is to transport you to another world where you can see something you wouldn't have to deal with in real life. And sometimes that moves you to see a fictional world and see how you can make that fantasy into reality. So don't ever think that you can't film. I when I do like family events, I record stuff. When I am asked to, like, hey, I want to go take some photos of me in my car, I say, let me do it. I'll happily do it. Like, let me just, I'll take some photos, throw them in Photoshop, or not Photoshop, Lightroom, and see what I can do to enhance it a little bit and see what I can do to make it what I like. I will take everything and anything I can to create content.
Mhm.
And I think SOS Seek Shelter is kind of the culmination of 4 years of me trying to figure out how to edit and how to film and how to create content. And you know, it's only up from here. Like you don't take steps back.
Hmm.
One thing that challenged me during Seek Shelter was I was supposed to work, but I had to film. I had 1 day to film. So I called my boss and I said, "Hey, I know this is 2 days out, but I need to either take an extended lunch or I need to I can't be at work." And she asked why, and I said, "I have to film this short film." And initially, both my bosses were on the phone, and initially one said, "Well, looking at the other, she's saying that you need to prioritize your job." And my response was, "Oh." And the reason my response was, "Oh," was because my job is not there. My job will rest in filmmaking. I will not, if I have to miss a day of work to film, I will do that. I will not let anything take me away from filming because it makes me happy. It helps me understand myself and the world around me. And it's what I want to do. And even what I learned during Seek Shelter is your dreams, what you see in your mind, can become reality. If you work hard enough and you try hard enough, you can get what's in your head out there.
Mm-hmm.
And what's in my head is I want to be a filmmaker. And if I try hard enough and I work hard enough, that can happen. And that's where I'm going.
Well,
So there's that.
well, we are all incredibly, all of us at Kaiju Ramen, me, Travis, Nathan, Danny, yeah, Brandon, everyone who's worked on this project, not your project, but just Kaiju Ramen as a whole. We're all incredibly proud of you. Like we were all incredibly proud of you at GFEST. I know the crew at Monsters with Attitude, they're proud of you. You've got an incredibly bright future ahead of you as a filmmaker. I hope that you never stop. And this was a really good conversation, Elijah. Thank you for letting me share your video with everybody and sitting down to talk to me about your just everything you got going on. Like you're an incredibly passionate guy, and we're all very, very proud of you. Even Eric says it. Like Eric says he's proud of you.
Thank you. I wouldn't feel as good as I did if it wasn't for everybody that has watched it and has given their opinions, and the people that have reached out and said how did it go, and you know, congratulations and all that. I think a lot of people feel like when people say it means a lot, they're kind of like they're just saying that just to, you know, be appreciative. But when I say it means a lot, it truly means a lot. It means the world. And I'm very thankful for the people that I'm surrounded by. I'm very thankful for how uplifting they are and how supportive everybody is, because even in moments where like I need that push, you guys are there, and I really appreciate it.
Where can people find more of your work, Elijah?
So if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at ET13 Productions. On Instagram, I have some figure photography. I'm hoping to start doing some more of that again. Some certain life situations, circumstances have been resolved, if you want to say it that way.
Sure.
So I'm hoping I can, you know, put up some of my miniatures and take some photos and use some of the lights and whatnot that I've purchased over the last few years. So I'm hoping to do that again. On my YouTube channel, S.O.S Seek Shelter goes live this coming Tuesday. So if you want to watch it with headphones, go to ET13 Productions on YouTube and you'll be able to check it out this Tuesday. I also have plans on producing some more videos. Eric actually tagged me to do a ranking of the 15 Showa Godzilla movies. I actually have started the script for that, so that's a video in the works. And then with S.O.S Seek Shelter, I realized I need to reflect on everything I've done. So I'm going to be creating something that's a retrospective look on me as a person and my creative mind and what I've done in the past and what I'm doing now and what I'd like to do in the future. So there's some projects in the works, and I have some other projects I can't talk about because they are some pretty big projects that I can't wait to finally have a final product I've been working on for a while now. So there's a lot of, there might not be a lot to show right now, but there is a lot I'm working on. And of course, if you want to see my editing, the videos I've edited, definitely check out Kaiju Ramen Media on YouTube, as most of the videos, not the live streams. I don't do a lot for the live streams, but most of the videos, actually, I think all of the videos that are currently available that are like actual videos were all edited by me. So again, thank you, Michael, for allowing me that opportunity to be the head of the video development side of everything. I really appreciate that. So yeah, definitely check out ET13 Productions on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, and check out Kaiju Ramen Media on YouTube for the content I've worked on. And if you want to hear me talk about filmmaking and the podcasts that I run and the creative side of that, Kaiju Conversation on all major podcast platforms. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Kaiju_Converse. So I again thank you, Michael, for this. Thanks to Eric and everybody in the chat who have been very kind and very supportive. I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys so very much.
Absolutely. It was our pleasure. And like you said, for anything Kaiju and Tokusatsu related, go to kaijuramenmedia.com. Issue 10 will be, issue 9 is almost sold out. Issue 10 is going to be released very, very soon. We're very excited about that issue, and we're going to, issue 11 is currently in production. So be on the lookout for that. And if you are looking for a Facebook group to join to talk about all things Kaiju and Tokusatsu, join the Monsters with Attitude collectors group that just started today with some friends of ours. So go check that out. And as always, stay tuned for more content from us at Kaiju Ramen Media, Monsters with Attitude, and everybody else involved. So Elijah, thank you so much for doing this. This was a pleasure, and the time just flew by. But this was a lot. This is a lot of fun, buddy. Thank you. I'm incredibly proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. To everyone in the chat, everyone still listening, still watching, thank you for sticking around with us. Hopefully we'll get some more conversations like this in the future. But until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye, guys.